In this video, I'm going to show you a work sample from a skill building course. You will see how a designer can document where additional drawings can be added to a work sample and what drawings can be added to a work sample to expand the scope. I'm also going to show you what images and text can be added to expand the intent of the work to better express the client. And then I'm going to show you how these additions might be included in a portfolio presentation to elevate the work so it can be presented alongside studio projects while still keeping the technical skills in focus. And so what you're looking at here is a work sample from a skill building course. In this case, it's the final sheet set that came out of a Revit class. And you'll see some renderings in here, but really the focus is on drawing coordination and using software to create technical construction documents. And so you can see here, we've just got some, colorless black and white line work on white paper. It's giving some expression of design intent, but these are construction documents. And so they're really not going to have the color and the vivacity of a design that comes when a designer is selecting the materials and FF&E that's specific to their project. These are all just regular Revit families. And so you can see here, it's a really nice drawing set that showcases the designer skills, but it may not be exactly what will showcase the design and really elevate it next to a series of studio projects in a portfolio. So now what I'm going to do is show you how a designer can document where additional drawings can be added to a work sample. So all I've done is think about where I ended with that Revit project and what parts of the project could really start to be expressed more fully with design intent and some more design details added. So what I did was I printed out the level 2 design plan. And you can see here, this design plan and all the drawings we're going to look at for this next part all still have the title block on the side. So they're still reading like construction documents. But for my purposes, they're actually a way to document kind of internally in my imaginary design firm how I'm going to add drawings to this project to elevate it so it looks good next to studio projects in my portfolio. So what I did was I printed this drawing sheet out, and I just printed it at 8.5 by 11. And I took my red pen, which is typically what we do when we're trying to mark up or document changes to a drawing set. And so I marked a couple of things. I marked first the camera view on this floor plan, that if I was going to take a rendering of this place, or of this space, and I was going to maybe use Enscape or some other skill sets that I have developed over this term to really create a beautiful rendering beyond just what you could create with Revit alone, where would I take the camera view? And so I have indicated there with the little V right here, and an A that indicates that I would take a camera view here. Now, beyond thinking about just the camera view when I look at this plan, I also want to think about a couple of other drawing types that I'm going to add. In order to elevate this to kind of the quality and level of a studio project, a rendered floor plan would really be great. So if I look at this floor plan, I have also documented a couple of things that I need to select in order to create the additional drawings for this work sample, starting with the rendered floor plan. And so you can see here, I have just tried to, as neatly as possible, tagged all of the furniture on this floor plan using numbers. And you can see I've tagged the numbers, or pardon me, tagged the furniture and the finishes that I need to select. And so they are numbered, as you can see here, 1 through 14. And so 1 is the wood flooring, 2 is the tile in the restrooms, 3 is the carpet. And then for the countertops, you can see there, it's shown in 2 places within that kitchenette over here, here and here. And then the rest of it is, I've just tagged individual pieces of furniture that number 5 through 14. Now, I want you to think about this in two ways. The first is because this I could show to my manager and say, okay, these are the selections of furniture that I need to pick out to render this floor plan. Can I go for it, or would you like some input on this? And it also allows me to know how many things I need to select before I go into rendering this thing. Because if I select all of these pieces and all these finishes at once through, Google searches and catalog searches at my favorite websites, it'll be a lot quicker for me to do them all at once, download the images, download the swatches that match, and then set myself up to render this floor plan. Then it will be for me to select the wood flooring, for example, render it on the plan, then go do an internet search for the swatch of the tile and then render that on the plan, and having to constantly go between these two functions in order to render this floor plan. So the idea of numbering is to indicate all the things that you need to have, make sure you have everything on your checklist that you have to download and find and search and select, and then that you're ready to start. So that's what those numbers indicate. And then the other thing that you can see on this floor plan is I've created an elevation tag here, and this is similar to what we do in Revit, but a lot of times in Revit, you'll see a circle on top of this elevation tag that will indicate the drawing number and sheet number, but I'm not going to put that here because I'm not creating a set of construction documents with this. All I'm doing is creating a rendered presentation plan and showing where an elevation will be taken, and you'll see what that looks like in the presentation in the portfolio shortly. But right now I just did a very subtle tag, elevation, or pardon me, section tag that runs through here and stops and starts so it's not overlapping the drawing. And then you can see I'm going to crop this section into an elevation later, which is why I was conflating those terms just a moment ago. So what you can see now here is I've documented on this plan where additional drawings can be added. Okay, let's move on. I want to show you something else here. This is a printout of the section drawings of this plan. And you can see here, I printed it out from that original drawing set that I showed you at the beginning. And I numbered the elements here because I'm going to take this section and I'm going to create an elevation of just this area on my final presentation. And so I've outlined it in red so that I could show perhaps my managers in the real world and say, hey, is this a good area to do an elevation? That's what I was thinking, to show the client. And the manager would be able to give me feedback based on that. But I've also here marked the same or used the same strategy of keying the elements that still need to be selected to create this rendering or create this rendered elevation. Now you can see here, it doesn't start at 1. This drawing that's marked up is coordinating with the one that I just showed you. And so there's a couple of elements that are the same. For example, remember in the previous drawing, number 4 was the countertop. And here, number 4 is still marking the countertop here. Number 9 on the floor plan I just showed you was these chairs, and I've got number 9 here. So I know that I don't have to reselect those, that they're going to be duplicates of information that I've already selected. So that saves me some time. But the number here, remember on the previous plan, we ended at 14. And so 15 and 16 are the new selections that I'm going to have to find before I can complete this, which is going to be the sconce and the wall finish. And so this is a way of continuing the numbering sequence of keying the information that you need to select before you begin rendering. Now, if that previous plan had not been numbered, and there was no other drawings that this needed to coordinate to, you could see here that I started numbering from 1. And so this would be how I would number an elevation that kind of stands alone and isn't related to selections that have already been selected in a previous drawing or indicated in a previous drawing. Okay, So now what we need to do, since we've selected the drawings that can be added to this work sample to expand the scope, I've shown you how to document them on a work sample. Now we're going to take a look at how, what images and text can be added to expand the intent of the work to better express the client. And really, all we need right now to expand the intent to express the client a little bit better is some information about the concept that's driving this design and some information about the client and perhaps our scope of work. And so if that doesn't exist in the project that you're trying to mark up and add drawings to, it's perfectly fine to invent that. And so I would just think deeply about this client and the type of space that we're working with, since it's this historical renovation. And I would start to think about an image that I could connect back to this design and use as the visual language to guide the design. So next, I'm going to discuss with you and show you how these additions might be included in a portfolio presentation so that we can elevate this set of construction documents to be presented alongside studio projects while still focusing on the technical skills. And so what I have here is a very, very simple sketch of a portfolio page. Sometimes we call these a storyboard. And all this is me thinking about the drawings that I have just documented, thinking about the drawings that I've just showed you that I want to start to infill and work with, and how I might incorporate these in a portfolio page. And the reason that we do this is because the drawing types that we select determine the layout of our portfolio page to a degree. We also do this planning to make sure that the page itself is full and has the drawing types that are consistent with the focus areas, or the drawing types that are consistent with how the focus areas are presented with other projects. So I want the same kind of drawings in the focus areas for this project that I have in other studio projects. And so I've created this very simple layout to start to think about how the drawings that I have considered adding to this will be incorporated in a portfolio page. And so this is just a blank piece of 8.5 by 11 paper and a red pen. You can see just by looking at this, I'm starting to think about margins and aligning my margins so that drawings start and stop at the same spot. I'm thinking about margins between drawings, both vertically and horizontally. I'm thinking about where the title is going to go on each of these drawings so that it's consistently placed relative to each image. And I'm thinking about the relative sizes of the drawings that I'm going to put here. And I'm also thinking about hierarchy when I lay this page out. So just to begin, you can see here in the upper left-hand corner, the place of prominence, the most important spot where every viewer is going to start. I want to put the concept image and client info. And so that's what I'm going to put here. I'm going to next include that perspective of that focus area. And remember, that was the hand-drawn V with the arrow written in red that was on that printout of the design plan that I showed you first in this section. So that's going to go there because those are fun to look at. They're really neat to express a design intent. And so that's the thing that's going to come second. Then the next thing is I'm thinking about my viewer, and I'm thinking that they're probably going to be wondering the scope of this project, how big it is, where they are in the floor plan when they see this perspective. And so the next thing I'm going to present is that rendered floor plan that I just showed you. And so I'm in this rendered floor plan, I'm not going to have the furniture numbers and the keys on there. I'm just going to have a beautiful floor plan that resembles the ones that we've created in past modules. But I am going to make sure that I include, beautiful high resolution textures, make sure that there's inner glows and shadows and glows coming in through the window. And I'm going to make sure that I also include a camera view so that as soon as my viewer finishes looking at this, then they see the camera view here on the plan so that they're instantly oriented. The next thing I'm going to present is an elevation. Now, when you create a really long elevation like we've done here, it aligns perfectly to the floor plan itself. And so I'm going to pause and show you that on my drawing. So you can see here, this is the plan that I'm going to be rendering. But as I just mentioned, when I render it, all of these tags are going to go away. And the thing that's going to remain is going to be this camera view and this indication of the section tag here, which will be an elevation in the presentation. I'm going to crop out all of this title block and everything so that it reads as a presentation drawing, not as a construction document. But what I was mentioning earlier was if I present this plan on my portfolio page and I present just below it a section, it's going to be the same size, it's going to be the same width. And so you can see here, this width right here is the same width of the floor plan itself. Now, I'm only going to show this very specific area. So if it were me, I would do a layer via cut in my presentation with this part of the drawing and with this part of the drawing and with, actually I'd stop there and I would probably create a transparency or an overlay to lighten the opacity of those two parts so that it doesn't, so that it reduces the focus a little bit. And my viewer is just drawn into this section. And I would crop out the top of this as well, just so that it's easier to see. So let's get back to it. I'm going to pause for a second and hop to my drawing. So you can see back on my storyboard here, this is the area of the elevation that I'm going to be focusing my viewer on. And then these are the two pieces that I'm going to lighten up just so that it still aligns with the floor plan above it, but I'm not going to render all that area because that area is not quite as interesting and there's not as much design development there. And then you can see finally at the bottom here, I've got my finishes and my furniture as well. Now, in this case, I have, if we think back to our numbering, I have 16 selections that I have numbered between my floor plan up here and my elevation down here, remember? But I don't necessarily have room for all those. I have 14 selected here, depending on the quality of the images that I have. You know, I may decide that I want to you know, have one really beautiful image right here that takes up all four parts of this, or maybe there's a long piece that I want to, you know, have it expand across these two boxes, for example. But this, I'm just blocking out that I've got selections for finishes and selections for furniture. And I'm right now thinking about them as separate grids within this overall layout. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be like this, but this is just what I'm starting to think about. And if I don't have enough room to show everything that I have selected, then I'm not going to show it all. I'm just going to show the ones that are the most important. Or perhaps if there's a part of this focus area that you can't see very well, the details in the very back of it, then I'll bring a zoomed in, you know, selection of those pieces here. For example, if in the back of this focus area, way in the corner, there's these really cool chairs, but you can't see them very well, I put them right here. So I'm just starting to think about building that puzzle piece for my viewer to pull together all of the design information of this drawing. Now, going one step further, I may also start to think about bringing in my presentation skills that I've learned so far and start to wonder about which elements of this storyboard I could bring in really unique borders. For example, I could probably, if the concept allowed it, I could probably bring at least a curved edge to this side here, or maybe down here, and take this image and make it round like we've tried to do in other assignments. I could probably round out or add a unique border to the perspective area because that looks really nice to do that. The floor plan and the elevation, they may not necessarily lend themselves to bringing in unique borders because you can crop really important information, but there's nothing wrong with maybe experimenting and thinking about bringing in a big circle, you know, behind these elements as a second layer. Just, you know, maybe a really light color to bring the eye into these two drawings and connect them in some unique way. And then Right now, I have made a grid of all of these swatches here, but I most certainly can make these a fun shape with unique borders, or uh, make the edge of these parts curve out in some cool way. So right now, as I said, this part is just to show how these additions might be included in a portfolio, just kind of elevate the work and present it like a studio project. And then once you have all the elements and pieces and drawing types in there, then you can start to think about those parts that are going to make it a little bit unique, with borders and effects and things like that. But for now, this is one very detailed presentation in which you have seen how a work sample from a skill building course stops at the end of that course, but then we can start to document where these drawings can be added to a work sample to expand the scope, and expand the intent of the work to express the client, and then start to think about how to present this so that we still can think about it as a technical or skill building course, but then elevate it so it still looks fun and engaging next to studio projects within your portfolio.